to another interesting tutorial. Today we'll learn the easiest way to make our paper bag short. So let's get started. The measurements displayed on the screen will be used for today's tutorial. So to begin with, we need a horizontal line on that point, which will serve as our waistband or turn up for the waistline. Then from that point, we're going to measure 3 inches downwards, which will now serve as our actual waistline. Once you've measured these 3 inches, you're ready to begin. Now, from that waistline we marked, we need to measure our waist to hip line, which is the hip length from your waistline to your hip line. Normally, it falls between 7 to 11 inches, but for mine is 9 inches. This depends on your height, really. So I'm working with 9 inches for today's tutorial. Then from the hip line, we need to measure our crotch depth. Okay, to determine the crotch depth, you just measure from the waistline. You measure hip circumference divided by 4. So our hip circumference is 44 inches. Divide by 4, that's 11. So we'll just mark 11 inches at this point. Now, another way to measure your crotch is to sit on a flat surface and measure from your waistline to that flat surface, just as you can see on the screen. Alternatively, you can measure your inseam and the outseam. So you subtract the inseam from the outseam, and any figure you get will be your crotch depth. Okay, so I just use the simple method of dividing my hip circumference by 4. Either way, you will still arrive at the same results. Okay, so next we need to measure the full length of this short, and the full length we're working with is 17 inches. So just measure that and mark that at this point. Then we're going to draw a horizontal line as well, just as we've done on all the points measured above. So in order not to get confused, let's just write down what each of these horizontal lines stand for. This is our crotch line, and this is our hip line. That's the full length, and this is our waistline. This will be for our turn up or for the waistband. Okay, so this is where we're going to fix our elastic. Okay, now what we need to do next now is to measure our hip circumference divided by 4. We are dividing every measurement by 4 because this is a quarter of our body circumference. Okay, so the hip circumference divided by 4 is 11 inches, and we're going to mark that on this point. Then we're going to draw a vertical line from that point to connect the waistline and the crotch line. Now, once this is done, what we need to do next is to measure our thigh circumference. That's the circumference around our thigh. And for today's class, we'll be using 26 inches. Okay, so 26 divided by 2 will be 13. So we're going to apply 13 on this crotch line. That way, we've created a 2-inch crotch extension. Okay, so from this point now, we're going to link that up to our waistline with a curve, but to make sure that we don't curve it so deep into our pants, we'll just measure 1.5 inches outwards so that when we curve it, we'll not go so deep. So on the bottom of our pants, it's a little bit slimmer than our thigh at the top. So we just need to measure it to make it accurate. But for this pant, we're not making it tight on our body. We want it a bit loose. Okay, so we'll just measure. For mine is 25 inches, so it's supposed to be 12.5 inches. So we'll just apply that at this point because we don't want it looking very tight. So from the 12.5 inch point, we'll just connect from this crotch line down to that point. Now that's it. Once this is done, we need to measure our hemming allowance. So for this pant, we're using 2-inch hemming allowance, and that brings us to the bottom of this pant. So that's 2 inches on that point. Then we'll draw a straight line to link up with that point. If you don't want to fall short of fabric, you can just fold. When you fold that in, you just transfer with your tracing wheel onto that part. Okay, then you now draw your line down to the bottom. So with this, we can say that our front pattern is almost ready. So normally we're supposed to come down by 1/2 inch of the waistline to create a little balance on that point. So just measure 1/2 inch from the waistline downwards. Then we're going to do same at the top, which is our allowance for hemming. Now our front pattern is ready to be cut out. When we cut this out, remember we did not use our waist circumference on this point because we'll be using an elastic, so there's no point shaping out the waistline, and this short will not have a dart, so we're just leaving it the way it is. Now we'll just cut out this pattern, then we'll use this to create out our back pattern. On a fresh pattern paper, I'll just transfer all these horizontal lines, and we'll use that to create our back pattern. Right, after transferring all the vertical lines, we'll now create our crotch extension for the back pattern. So we'll extend our crotch by 2.5 inches. This works for most adults, really, 2.5, but you can consider making it up to 3 inches if you're very curved on the hips, but mostly 2.5 inches works for most adults, between 2 and 3 inches. Okay, so I'm using averagely 2.5 inches. Then what we're going to do here is to create the butt rise. Okay, and to create our butt rise, we need to measure same amount we added here. We need to add same at the top of our pant. That's from the actual waistline. Okay, so we're adding 2.5 inches on that point. You remember that we measure 3 inches at the top, so it's from that point you're going to add your 2.5 inches, because even the back as well will have our 3-inch extension at the top. So we just connect that point straight to the waistline. This serves as our butt rise. As you know, the back is meant to be higher than the front. Okay, so we'll just connect, we'll draw this crotch line again. Okay, so when we do that, we'll now we'll measure 2 inches from this waistline down to the bottom. If you noted, we did not add any seam allowance when we're measuring the front panel. There was no seam allowance added anywhere. So this 2 inch we're measuring here will now serve as our seam allowance as well as the extension for the back pattern. So that's what we're going to use as our seam allowance. Now what you need to do at this point is, since this short is meant to be a little bit loose, it's not going to be fitted on your body, so feel free to increase that from 2 inches to 2.5 or 3, just to have a little ease. Then when drafting the front pattern as well, you could as well add 1/2 inch to the front pattern. Once you add a little ease, it will be free a bit on your body. Okay, so just feel free to add as much ease as you want. Now we're going to just connect all these points up. So same way we did for the front, we're going to measure 2 inches at the back, just to make sure we don't curve it so deep into the crotch. Cut the pattern out on this front pattern. If you want pockets for your shorts, you just go ahead to create your pockets at that point. You can just measure about 6 inches from the side front. Then on the depth also, you're going to measure about 8 or 9 inches. Okay, so you just draw your line to connect at that point. Okay, that's if you want a pocket, just that way. Or you could create your side pocket 2-inch depth and 6.5 inch width, like that. 6.5 and 2-inch depth, like so. Then you just connect that with either a curve or a straight line. So that's how to create your pocket. But we don't need pocket for this shop. It's just a very simple one that we want to create. Okay, so the next thing we'll do now is to cut out our pattern. So that's it for the pattern. Next, we're going to cut on fabric. Sew here and sew this as well. So now we'll cut our belt. I'm using 2.5 and I've placed that on fold so that by the time I sew with 1/2 inch, I'll still have 2 inches. If you have the 20mm elastic, is better because it's bolder. You just put that at once. But these are the ones I have at the moment, so I'll just make do with them. So what I need to do is my waist circumference minus 4 inches. So as my waist circumference is 36, I'll just measure 32 inches. And that is the length I'll be using. And I'll measure 2 of that, or 3. You can even make it up to 3. for watching today's video. I hope it was helpful and interesting. Please subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, and turn on the notification bell. Ensure you click on all notifications. Have a look at my other videos and do have a lovely day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.